I think we can start to make with the webinar. So welcome to INQAAHE Talks. So this is a series of webinars where INQAAHE aims to connect to its membership and connect its membership with the broader international higher education quality assurance community to discuss today's pressing issues. So we bring together international experts and practitioners to share insights, to share challenges, best practices, and solutions to ensure that higher education and quality assurance continue to serve at their best our increasingly interconnected communities. My name is Fabrizio Trefiro. I'm an INQAAHE board member, and I'm head of quality benchmark services at ACTIS UK ENIC, which is the UK National Qualification Recognition Body, and I will be chairing today's session. Today's session looks at the quality assurance of cross-border education, also commonly referred to as transnational education or TNE, and that refers to the provision of education programs in countries other than that in which the degree awarding body is based. So it is about the mobility of programs across border rather than the mobility of students. And we'll be hearing from 4 different quality assurance bodies and regulators in both sending and receiving locations of TNE. I'm really pleased to welcome our 4 panelists: Dr. Abi Coveney, Senior Risk Manager at the Office for Students in England; Professor Khairul Mohamed Sahari, Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the Malaysian Qualifications Agency; Dr. Kushnood Haq, Vice President of Middle States Commission on Higher Education in the United States; and Dr. Nitesh Sughnani, Director of Higher Education at the Knowledge and Human Development Authority in Dubai. So they will introduce us to their organization and their approach to and experience with the quality assurance of transnational education, either inbound or outbound. And they will help us exploring some of the key challenges and issues pertaining to the quality assurance of TNE through discussion and Q&A. We are indeed very keen to hear from delegates and engage with attendees. So please do use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to raise any questions or comments that you may have. It is a great occasion to engage in conversation on topical issues such as the quality assurance of transnational education with some of the leading agencies and experts. To help us informing our discussion, we also have 4 short recorded videos offering the perspective from different stakeholders. We will be hearing from Mengyu Liu of Cscsc in China and Becca Tavakiladze at World Education Service in North America, Canada, and they will share the view of credential evaluators. We will also be hearing from Samantha Young of Monash University, Australia, and Frank Huddleton of Hertfordshire University in England, 2 large providers of TNE adopting very different models of transnational education. Now, before hearing from our speakers, I would like to express on behalf of INQAAHE our serious concern about the ongoing war in Ukraine and for the safety of our colleagues at NACA, the Ukraine Quality Assurance Body. We hope the war will come to an end as soon as possible, and that dialogue and cooperation, which are the fundamental values underpinning the work of INQAAHE, will resume soon. Lastly, a few words about housekeeping. We have muted all your microphones to help with the smooth running of the event, and your cameras have also been disabled. But we're very keen to hear from you, as I was saying, so please do use the Q&A function to raise questions and comments. Also, the webinar will be recorded and it will be made available for free access after the event. Last but not least, I would also like to thank Beatrice and Maria at the INQAAHE Secretariat, who in the background are making sure that everything runs smoothly. So without further ado, I invite our first speaker to take the floor. Over to you, Khairul.
Thank you, Fabrizio. I hope everyone can see the screen. Okay, thank you. So thank you for the opportunity given to MQA for us to share about our approach in TNE in Malaysia. So this is just roughly the flow, and just a bit of background about MQA. So we have the function of implementing the National Qualifications Framework, as well as the regulatory body in charge of the quality assurance of programs and also institutions in the country. This also includes the TNE inbound programs through various means. And we also actually have the register for all these qualifications, and we do actually also do facilitate for recognition, articulation of qualifications, okay, coming from abroad and so on. So we have at the moment our register about 17,000 programs registered that has obtained full accreditation. And just to highlight some of the recent events or recent policies that we have the policies on lifelong learning. We have access for credit transfer and also for academic qualifications award through means of recognition of prior learning. We are also very much into micro-credentials, and we already have about 12,000 registered micro-credentials with MQA. Okay, of course, when we talk about TNE, we have the various types of TNE in the country. We have those from foreign branch campus, franchise programs, and also programs that are under certification bodies such as the ACCA programs. And for other types of programs, you also have a joint award, degrees, and also dual and also double degree programs. So the ones that requires accreditation from MQA are the first four, including the joint award, and the dual and double degree requires notification to the ministry, but must be accredited and recognized programs for it to be approved by the ministry. So this is with regards to the program, the counterpart programs from overseas. So the ones that is actually offered by the institution in the country has to be accredited by MQA. And in terms of the breakdown on the TNE in Malaysia, so we have these foreign branch campuses in the country. So we have 10 branch campuses altogether. The one that is being in bold are the ones that are receiving the self-accrediting status from MQA, so they can accredit their own programs, whereas the rest has to go through the normal route of getting their programs accredited. So altogether, we have about 540 franchise programs, and we also have about 43 certification programs from ACCA, CIMA, and so on. So we have also samples of joint awards that are listed here. And the foreign branch campuses comes mainly from the UK and also Australia, but we are also having other countries to also actually have interest in opening up their branch campuses in Malaysia. And we also have our local institutions offering their programs abroad. So we have, these are just some samples from franchise programs by local higher education providers. And we also have offshore campuses, regional centers, and also regional centers. And altogether, we have about 40 programs offered abroad. We have about 77 programs offered abroad. I think it's more than 117 programs offered abroad from about 19 countries around the world. So this is just some of the statistics that we have at the moment. In terms of the quality assurance, in Malaysia, Malaysian MQA is actually established under the Parliament Act in 2007, and the institutions are also governed by respective acts. For the public, there is the Act 30 on the University and College University Act, and for private higher education institutions, there is this Act in 1996. So they have to comply to both acts in terms of the institution and also in terms of program accreditation. And these are the documents because we are in charge of the quality assurance. So we have actually all the standards and code of practices being developed to help guide us in doing our quality assurance activities. And we also have program-specific standards to also help us to evaluate and to actually quality assure programs in the country. And all these are in line, has to be aligned to the Malaysian qualifications framework. Okay, and in terms of circulars and policies, we have, these are the recent ones that actually are in force. The latest one will being the Ministry of Higher Education Circular in 2021, and also accompanied by our MQA notification letter, which we actually express or actually highlighted the flexibility for branch campuses, franchise programs, and certification programs to meet the certain requirements in the MQA program standard. So when we compare this to the previous circular, a lot of relaxation and flexibility are now given to the institutions in terms of programs. And the main criteria is basically the qualification and the home university must be recognized and accredited by the respective recognized authorities in their home country or under jurisdiction of authorities recognized as comparable to MQA. So I think this is the most important criteria that we have for any inbound programs coming into the country. And for outbound, we have circulars dating as recent as 2021. So we have the responsibility of the higher education providers to inform MQA, inform the ministry, obtain approval from the significant authorities of the countries where they're going in. And for in terms of the programs, it has to be accredited, fully accredited programs. At least 3 cohorts of students have graduated from these programs in order for it to be franchised out or to be eligible for TNE, outbound TNE, conventional type programs awarded by the local higher education providers, and of course they have to inform MQA. So there is also the criteria in terms of the institutional rating system that we have in the country. All these institutions have to at least obtain certain tiers in the respective categories of rating system. Setara is for college, university, and university status institutions. So they have to at least get a tier 4 out of the maximum tier 6. For colleges, they have to at least get a minimum of tier 5 out of the maximum 6 tiers in the MyQuest rating system. And these programs, approval and the higher education providers registration with MOHI must be valid for these programs to be offered outside of Malaysia. And this is just the general quality assurance processes that we have. We have the provisional, the full, and also the maintenance audit to maintain the programs that are offered in Malaysia. And this is also for the previous one was for the normal institutions. These are for the self-accrediting institutions. So there are maintenance audits that we conduct every 5 years to audit the institutions to ensure that they are compliant with the MQA standards. And in terms of recognition, this is very important because all these programs that are accredited by MQA or through the self-accrediting status institutions will be registered in our register. And the ECSRAF, the one that is on the right bullet, the right circle, is actually recognition of programs offered abroad. So, but these are limited to the programs that are receiving or that actually have or entertain Malaysian scholars in their programs abroad. So all these are important for recognition for public service department to work in the public sector, if anyone is intending to work with the public sector, recognition for professional practices, and for scholarship study loans, and also to further their studies in the country. Challenges that we have, adoption to other requirements and regulations. So local requirements for program design and curriculum. And this is with regards to the inbound and the establishment of policies, managing quality, ensuring the program's quality is monitored regularly, transparency of validation reports by the home university, and risk of fraud for online and distance learning courses. So these are some of the challenges with regards to inbound and outbound TNEs. Moving forward, we would encourage local higher education providers to explore diverse range of outbound TNEs. We have our first branch campus by our UKM, or University Kebangsaan Malaysia, soon in Doha, Qatar. So I think that's a step forward for the local public institutions. But for private, I think they are more progressive. So some of the institutions here actually have programs abroad as well. So we are also looking at the possibility of MQA accrediting all these qualifications offered abroad, or looking at the same approach as what QAA is doing in the UK, and more collaboration with QA bodies globally to ensure the quality of UTMA TNE's programs are at its best, and also empowering flexible education, micro-credentials for both local and foreign students. So I think that's all from me. Fabrizio, back to you.
Thank you very much, Khairul. That's great. And over to Nitesh from Malaysia to Dubai. You will see they adopt a different approach to regulating, overseeing incoming TNE. Over to you, Nitesh.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Fabrizio. Hi, greetings from a very, very hot Dubai. It's close to 50 degrees here. So reading all the comments about the weather in other parts of the world does make us very jealous. My name is Nitesh Sughnani. I am the Director of Higher Education. I work at an agency called the Knowledge and Human Development Authority. This picture in front of you is actually my view. So I'm actually facing this part of the office. We're often referred to as the Google of Dubai government. We have indoor sports. We have a jogging track that's just in front of me, yoga rooms, and we work very differently as an education agency, but I just thought I'd share that with you. Essentially, we're a government agency, a government authority. We were set up in 2007, and our responsibility is the regulation, licensing, and quality assurance of private education in Dubai. So we do have a Ministry of Education in the country. It sits in Abu Dhabi, and the Ministry of Education is responsible for public education across the country. But when it comes to private education, each of the 7 Emirates has its own approach to regulating private education. Our vision is lifelong learning to fulfill Dubai's aspirations, and our mission has always revolved around access, quality, and engagement with the community. Just a little bit about Dubai for those who are not familiar. I think one of the unique features is that it's a very diverse community. There's over 200 nationalities. 90% of the population is expatriate. I'm expatriate. You know, I've 5 generations of my family have lived in Dubai, and the local population is less than 10%. So that's a very unique feature. You don't see that in many other places around the world. We've also had a very significant increase in the population, over 40%. Sorry, I'll just go back there. Oops, I don't know what's happening. Anyways, I'll just continue. So 40% increase in population over the last 5 years. 10 million in the UAE total. Geographically, also very centrally located. We're 4 hours within many parts of the world, 8 hours within 1/3 of the world's population. And this really drives the Dubai ambition, which is to be an education hub for the region and beyond. In terms of our breakdown of institutions, again, a unique feature of Dubai is we have a large number of international campuses. These are IBCs that have set up from different parts of the world. So we've got a total of 33 institutions located in Dubai's free zones. The Dubai free zones are the zones that KHDA regulates, and it falls under the jurisdiction of KHDA. Anything outside of free zone is regulated by the Ministry of Education. So within the free zones, we've got 33 campuses, of which 26 are IBCs, or they come from other parts of the world, essentially. You could look at the numbers here. You know, it's very small compared to many other parts of the world, but in the free zones, we have close to 30,000 students. There was that dip during COVID, which most countries have seen, but we have recovered from that. And an interesting part of this is the number of international students. So we're close to 30% international, and these are students coming to Dubai specifically for the purpose of education. In terms of quality assurance, now we don't accredit like in Malaysia and other parts because the Ministry of Education has an accreditation arm called the Commission for Academic Accreditation. So we leave the accreditation to them. What we're interested in is if anyone is coming here to set up as an IBC, that we ensure that there is transnational quality assurance. So in order to do that, we've set up a board. It's called the University Quality Assurance International Board, UQAAHE in short. It's essentially a board of an international advisory board that consists of 10, 12 members, all experts in higher ed, quality assurance. They've either been heads of accreditation agencies, QA agencies, or vice chancellors at universities. And we use an equivalency validation model. So we want to ensure that any branch that operates in Dubai has similar outcomes that they would at the home campus. And we look at their teaching, assessment, and focus on their quality assurance as well. We also try and build on the home quality assurance. So we work very closely, and I'll show this on the next slide, with the QA agencies and the accrediting bodies in the home country. So we want to make sure we understand what is the home country doing, and then what can we add on to ensure this transnational quality assurance. We also publish various good practice guides like other agencies do. So this is the network. We have a large contingent of universities from the UK, a couple from the US, some from France, from India, from Australia, and so on. And as a result of that, we have to have good relationships with the QA bodies and the accrediting agencies in those various countries. And we've signed agreements with these agencies. We have close contact with them. And it's just good to have that collaboration. We can easily pick up the phone, drop an email in case there's an issue or a challenge with a particular institution. Something else that we've done, again, following in Malaysia's footsteps, is we've also introduced a rating system for Dubai. It's called the Higher Education Classification, and it was built in collaboration with QS. So it's essentially modeled on QS Stars. Now, QS Stars is a voluntary product. Any university around the world can opt for QS Stars, and it rates institutions across various criteria. There's core criteria such as teaching, research, internationalization, and employability. It looks at facilities, but it also looks at other things such as arts and culture, inclusion, happiness and well-being. And these are important things for Dubai. And there are two core purposes for this classification model. One is a public information tool. So we want to make sure that students have access to information as they make choices to pick universities in Dubai. And the other, of course, is an improvement tool for universities. We still haven't used it as Malaysia has as a policy instrument. So we haven't mandated that institutions need to be certain or in a certain rating category, for policy decisions. So that's yet to come, but we've only run 3 cycles of the HEC so far. Another initiative that we've helped come up with, and Fabrizio was involved when we first started this, is the Quality Beyond Boundaries group. Now, it's a network or an alliance of the major sending and receiving countries of branch campuses. We found that there's a need to have a smaller network or a group of agencies that were like-minded, that had similar challenges and could also work towards similar opportunities. And we've done a lot of work with the QBB group over the years, including, so that's the network. We've got the major sending countries, UK, US, Australia. In the US, we have representation from WASC as one of the accrediting agencies, and the major receiving countries or cities, Dubai, Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong. We've engaged with this group on various projects. So we've looked at student engagement, we've looked at academic integrity, we've looked at the quality assurance of online education. And over the past couple of years, we've had many sessions where we've been able to share our experiences with COVID protocols, with transition to online, transition back to face-to-face. And it's just a very good group that we can quickly get in touch with and share these valuable experiences with. We've recently streamlined our process to establish a higher education institution or a branch in Dubai, made it much shorter in terms of the timeline that it takes, and it really involves 4 phases. We've got an eligibility that's called the introduction form. It's essentially some basic questions to understand who the institution is, what's their legal status in the home country, are they accredited, who quality assures them, and what are their plans for the Dubai campus. We run through this eligibility, after which we go into a detailed registration. The registration includes a business plan, financial viability, financial projections, investment, and so on. An academic plan, which talks about programs, curriculum, the faculty model, quality assurance, largely focusing on transnational quality assurance arrangements, and also who the academic head for the Dubai campus will be. As soon as these are reviewed and done, and we have a mechanism for review, we then issue a permit to the institution and then allow them to start operating. So we've really streamlined the process. We do want to encourage more high quality institutions to come and set up in Dubai with this ambition of being a hub for the region and the world beyond that. I'll just stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions through the chat or at a later time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitesh. That's really interesting. Already we can see how 2 key host locations for transnational education have developed different systems to fit the needs of the different locations and the different systems. Now, from 2 receiving countries, we're going to move and and listen to agencies from sending countries of transnational education. So I'd like to invite Abi to start with. Abi, over to you.
Thank you, Fabrizio. I'm just going to share my screen. Bear with me one moment. Okay, I hope that's visible to everyone. Yes, okay. So yes, first of all, thank you to Fabrizio and INQAAHE for inviting me to speak today. It's really exciting to be speaking at an event like this with people from so many different parts of the world. I'm a competition and registration manager at the Office for Students, and I'm one of the people who leads our approach to regulating transnational education. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the OFS and how we operate, and then move on also to talk about how we regulate the transnational education that other providers, the English providers, deliver around the world. So starting off, who are the OFS and what does the OFS do? So the OFS is the independent regulator for higher education in England. And we were established in 2017 by an Act of Parliament, the Higher Education and Research Act. It's important to note that with the regulator for higher education in England, there are other bodies responsible for the oversight of higher education in the other nations of the UK, so Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And we work closely with them to deal with UK-wide issues relating to higher education, and also to make sure that we can communicate how the system works in the UK. And one of the things that we're doing with that in mind at the moment is we're developing a statement, jointly developing a statement which was set out for the colleagues, particularly the colleagues that are joining events like this today, how high standards and quality are assured around the UK. The Office for Students operates with our goal to ensure that every student, whatever their background, has a fulfilling experience of higher education that enriches their careers and lives. It's not a requirement for an English higher education provider to register with the Office for Students, but most higher education providers do choose to register with us because registration allows them access to a range of benefits. So, for example, access to the student loan system for their eligible students to fund their studies, access to public grant funding, the ability to apply for a student sponsor license to recruit international students, and also the ability to apply for degree awarding powers to award their own qualifications, and also university title. And the Office for Students has a broad remit overseeing all aspects of higher education. And we have all of the providers that are registered with us, which is around 420 at the moment, are listed on our website on what we call the OFS register. And there's all sorts of higher education providers on there. We cover the breadth of the higher education sector. So there'll be universities, more traditional multi-faculty universities that will be names that will be known around the world, but also looking at much smaller specialist providers, colleges, and also private higher education providers. Any provider that's wishing to be registered with the Office for Students, first of all, has to demonstrate that it meets our conditions of registration. And once registered, they have to continue to meet those conditions. Our conditions of registration are set out in a key document of our regulation called the Regulatory Framework, which is also available on our website if anyone's interested in reading more. And they cover a broad range of things, but in particular, quality and standards, and other conditions that allow us to ensure the providers are able to deliver those quality and standards. So, for example, requirements around management and governance, and also financial viability and sustainability of providers. And if the Office for Students identifies that there's a risk that a provider has breached or may breach a condition of one of our conditions of registration, we have a range of powers at our disposal that we can use to address those concerns, and that can be through to imposing specific conditions, which is a condition of registration that relates to that higher education provider particularly, all the way through to monetary penalties and removing the provider from our register so that they're no longer able to benefit from the benefits of registration. Our approach to regulation is very data-led. We collect a lot of data from providers about their provision and about their students, and we use that to assess whether they are continuing to meet the conditions of registration. We're also a risk-based regulator, so we don't operate, for example, cyclical processes of reviews of providers, but we use the data that we collect from them and from other sources to identify if there are particular risks and focus our attention there. We're also an outcomes-focused and principles-based regulator, which means that we don't set particular rules about how providers have to meet our conditions of registration, about how they meet the conditions of registration, but we're focused on the outcomes that they achieve for their students, and we allow them to choose the best way to meet those conditions and to achieve those outcomes to suit the type of students that they have and their operating model. And I just want to highlight that we're clear that our work covers all students, and in particular that it covers students studying under transnational education arrangements, so students based outside of the UK but studying with an English provider. So as I'm sure most of you will be aware, England and the UK is a key sending country for TNE. Many of our registered providers are involved in TNE provision around the world. And therefore, it's really important that we make sure that we can regulate those courses on the same basis as the courses that are delivered within England, and that students studying on those courses can have have confidence that they're going to receive the same quality and standards in their courses as if they were studying in the UK. So how exactly do we regulate TNE? So as I've said already, students studying through TNE arrangements with a registered English higher education provider benefit from the same regulatory protections for quality and standards as students studying in England. And we take the same approach to regulating those courses. We receive information about transnational education through a range of different sources. So I've listed some of them here. So for example, reportable events. This is one of our requirements of registration, that providers have to tell us certain events, and some of those events relate to transnational education. So it might be that they're opening a new campus, or it can be the termination of a partnership and so on. And we assess all of these events and determine if that means that we need to take some action to protect the interests of students. We also get what we call third-party notifications, and this is a route by which anyone can tell us something about an English higher education provider that relates to our conditions of registration. So we get notifications from students in particular, also from staff at higher education providers, but also members of the public and overseas regulatory agencies at times. And again, as with the reportable events, we assess every notification that we receive and consider how that tells us about the compliance of the provider with our conditions of registration and any risks to students. We also receive data about transnational education through a return called the aggregate offshore record. And this is a really important return for us, but at the moment it's not at the same level as the data that we receive for students studying in England. It's a much higher headcount level rather than an individual record. So thinking about some of the challenges that we're currently trying to address in regulating transnational education, one of the key areas that we're looking at is how we can improve the information that we receive about transnational education to allow us to regulate as effectively as possible. So a big area for us is looking at data. We've got a longer term ambition over the coming years to improve the level of detail in the data that we receive about TNE students so that we can bring that more on a par with students studying in England. But we'd also like to make sure that things like our third-party notifications route is better understood by transnational education students, so they know that they can come and tell us as the regulator if there's anything that they're concerned about.
Thank you very much, Abi. That's great. Very good to hear developments in England with the Office for Students. And now over to you, Kushnood, to give us your regional perspective from the United States.
Thank you, Fabrizio. Good morning, everybody. I want to start by thanking the audience for attending this important conversation about transnational education and quality assurance. Also, a big thanks to Fabrizio, Bia, and Maria for their efforts in coordinating this event. And then finally, I would like to thank Middle States President, Dr. Heather Perfetti, for her support and leadership and for having a clear vision about our important role in the international quality assurance arena. As one of the 6 institutional accreditation agencies in the US, Middle States is committed to expanding its reach globally through collaboration and cooperation with international institutions, quality assurance agencies, and government entities throughout the world. So let's look at who we are and some of the characteristics for our organization. My name is Kushnood Haq, and I'm the Vice President for Institutional Peer Relations at Middle States Commission on Higher Education in the US. Before we look at specifically at Middle States, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the educational landscape, the regulatory landscape within the United States. We have 3 main entities, and they have separate roles, yet they interact quite a bit with each other. US Department of Education is the federal department that mainly oversees the student financial aid. Then we have states who give charters and approved programs, academic programs, and the accreditation agencies like Middle States that oversee accreditation processes and grants accreditation or reaffirmation. So in terms of mission and vision, the big thing to remember is that we are really committed to education excellence, and we want to be a prominent voice and champion in higher education, as stated in our vision. A quick snapshot of Middle States. We have 519 institutions in our portfolio right now, mainly from New York State and Pennsylvania, but also neighboring states as well as Puerto Rico. In order for institutions to be affiliated with us, they must be a degree-granting post-secondary institution, and we cover all Carnegie types, meaning that we cover from associate to doctoral degrees, and these could be public or private institutions, and could be very large institutions, large public university, or a small institution and seminary of very few students. And overall, we serve more than 2 million students, and we are the gatekeeper of $18 billion worth of financial aid, meaning that in order for institutions to qualify for financial aid for their students, they have to be in good standing with Middle States accreditation. So our global footprint actually is not something that we did intentionally. We followed our institutions to facilitate their expansion overseas. And as you can see, we're in quite a few different countries. In terms of globalization of MSCHE institutions, 17% of our institutions have 1 or more international location. That makes it 111 Middle States member institutions that operate in 745 international locations. And as you can see, the breakdown of branch campuses and main campuses and so on. Another important thing to remember is that Middle States also accredits 18 international institutions located outside the US and chartered outside the US. Our approach to quality assurance really is a different approach than some of the other discussions that took place. Our focus is on compliance, of course, because without compliance, the institution would not be in good standing, but also on continuous improvement. We encourage institutions during their reaffirmation to tell their story based on their own mission, through the lens of their own mission, but at the same time provide solid evidence for our standards as well as individual criteria. The institutional priorities of an institution are really in the forefront, and that ties the assessment process to the planning process for future cycles. And then continuous improvement through the peer evaluator driven continuous improvement, meaning that the accreditation takes place not by a specific government agency or a different entity, but it's done by peer evaluators, different college professors, administrators that we compile and send those teams to different institutions. So really, that's where the big difference is, that we are peer evaluator driven organization. And we expect the process to be inclusive and all the primary stakeholders, including students, staff, faculty, and administration, to be fully engaged in the process. Some of the challenges in international quality assurance that we've had to deal with. On the left side, there are the organizational challenges, meaning these are some of the challenges we face as Middle States. Some of the things like travel, health, safety, and security, securing visas and getting insurance for, it's been a big problem getting insurance in some of the countries around this time because of the pandemic and other political upheavals. And then regulatory matters and language barriers and so on. So those are some of the usual challenges. But then quality assurance challenges, these are for ourselves as the coordinators of accreditation, but also for our institutions. These are some big issues, again, health, safety, and security. But then down towards the bottom, the highlighted area, these are specific to the logistics for accreditation and visits and so on. So identifying and training review teams of peer evaluator is a big issue for us. Applying standards that are not so prescriptive but more holistic is another challenge, and then ensuring international participation with our events, and then engaging with international quality assurance agencies has been challenging, but we have a renewed commitment under the leadership of our new president, and we are committed to internationalization and being an active voice in the whole process. So with that, I thank you, and back to you, Fabrizio.
Thank you very much, Kushnood. I think it is quite fascinating already to see really different approaches to quality assurance, regulating, monitoring, transnational education, either inbound or outbound, which does raise already some interesting questions about also considering that in some countries there's no regulation at all for transnational education, either inbound or outbound. And that's raised interesting questions, in particular for a global organization such as INQAAHE, about what are usually referred to as regulatory or quality assurance gaps or overlaps, and how to make sure that Tne is quality assured, the quality standards of transnational education are monitored, but also how to ensure that transnational education providers are not overcome by unnecessary duplication, let's say. And this also raises other interesting questions about how it is possible for quality assurance bodies in sending and receiving countries to cooperate, to talk to each other, to better understand each other in their approaches. And here INQAAHE, of course, has an incredible, important role to play. Now, before addressing some of these questions, and I'd like to hear your views about the role that cross-border cooperation plays in your activities, but also your views of how INQAAHE could contribute and support the international education community in addressing these gaps and overlaps. I'd like to play the videos that some stakeholders have kindly shared with us, providing additional different perspectives, the perspectives from credential evaluators and the perspective from Tne providers. So I'll start playing the videos from Cscsc and World Education Services. Then I will ask each of the panelists to respond briefly to the points made in those videos. And then I will play the contribution from Monash and her for Sharon, and I'll do the same. And then I will take questions from the delegates. I've got a huge list of questions I'd like to ask the panelists, but I'll prioritize the questions from the delegates. So please do already type the questions you would like to ask the panelists now. I'll start with the contribution from Cscsc in China. That's the one.
Dear Dr. Fabrizio Terefilo, fellow colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Mengyu Liu from the Department of Overseas Credentials at the China Service Center for Scholarly Exchange, or Cscsc. TNE, as an important format of international education, attracts a huge number of students all over the world. It could promote sharing of high-quality educational resources and improve global academic exchanges. It also enhances cultural understandings and prepares talents with cultural awareness in a globalized world. We have been receiving applications from TNE program candidates for all these years. Some common types of TNE we came across are China foreign cooperatively run schools and programs, branch campuses, and other joint double degree and validated programs. We will evaluate based on the laws, regulations, and the standards of both the country of delivery and the country of award. To ensure the quality of the TNE degree programs, we in principle recognize programs that both the awarding body and the delivery body are fully accredited and recognized in their respective countries. We do have the challenge from low-quality TNE programs, which damage the students' rights and benefits, as well as the development prospects of TNE. That suggests that TNE needs to be regulated, and to do so requires the education authorities of different countries to take the responsibility of supervising.
Thank you, Bea. I think we can play also before asking the panelists to respond to that, we can play the one from Wes, because they raise a similar point that Cscsc has raised, which is really the importance for credential evaluators to receive some reassurance about the quality and standards of TNE. We've already seen from the presentation of the four panelists that TNE can take different shapes and forms. And the complexity of the TNE landscape is only bound to increase, in particular post-COVID, I say, where we can see there will be a tendency for international students to keep wanting to pursue an international education, but perhaps more regionally and through different innovative models. So for credential evaluators, it will be very important to have means to understand those TNE operations, those TNE qualifications, and how quality and standards are maintained. And this came across from the Cscsc intervention. Let's hear from Wes.
Hi everyone, my name is Beka Tavart-Kiladze. I'm a Senior Director of Global Education and Knowledge at World Education Services, WES. WES has been dedicated to helping immigrants, international students and refugees with international education achieve success in the US and Canada. Over 3 million individuals have received our assessments around the world over the years. These are folks who aspire to come to Canada or the US. I'm very pleased and thankful for the opportunity to inform the discussion today and provide a perspective from a credential evaluation service vis-à-vis key challenges in TNE. First, what is TNE? Let's get a brief description. The provision of academic qualifications from an educational institution located in one country to students living and studying in another country is a basic definition. However, here you see the models and scenarios in TNE education and some basic questions around it. Now, in today's reality, the fact is that in these last 2 years, we have seen a move from face-to-face learning to e-learning on a massive scale. The growing familiarity of institutions and students with TNE delivery models has changed the environment. Some studies indicate that 1/3 of international students at US universities were studying remotely from their home country during the pandemic. And I believe this is precisely why now is the time to analyze TNE and look for new possibilities moving forward. We need to narrow our focus to the challenges in evaluation of transnational education programs, as they often fall outside of the scope of traditional recognition methodologies. We often run into challenges evaluating TNE credentials. We need to look at specific cases where we have successes and analyze the viability of possible international recognition schemes. Now, these are some of the points which surround the transnational education and I believe needs to be addressed. There's certainly shifting of perception in terms of what constitutes an academic study, and there might be an opportunity to further define it. Also, lack of coordinated governance and regulated policies is a challenge which requires attention. We have good actors and bad actors, and there are varying levels of transparency. We know the type of TNE agreement can be difficult to identify, and only logos and wordings on certificates do not always reflect the true nature of partnerships. We find words such as in collaboration with, validated, and so on and so forth, which say nothing. In my opinion, we should take it upon ourselves to look toward the future. Transnational education has been around the world for over a century in various forms, but through necessity and privilege, we have to come to a point where new policies and practices are necessary in order to move forward. Thank you very much for this opportunity to provide a brief perspective from WES. Thank you.
Thank you, Dia. And now over to our panelists. Clearly, both credential evaluators have raised, in my view, similar points about how to be able to identify quality, good from good, and how to distinguish good and bad actors, how to identify the nature of the operations and their quality. What would be your initial response as a quality assurance body to these concerns raised by, or issues raised by credential evaluators? Kushnood, I see that you raised your hand already. Yeah, please.
Thank you. So in both videos, I saw that there was a commonality that they are both looking for some sort of international standards for transnational education, which from my perspective, I think would be a really, really difficult thing to do, given all of the different models that you heard about today and being utilized throughout the world. So finding that framework, I think, is really the key to address some of these issues.
Thank you, Kushnood. Very interesting point. We may go back to that. Anyone else would like to add to that? Abi.
So I think this is a really good example of why it's so important for there to be good networks and communication between the agencies in sending and receiving countries for TNE, and that's one of the things that the OFS is really keen to do at the moment is to build relationships. And I've already spoken to some of the other speakers around the table today and some of the other people who have joined us in the audience today to allow us. And these sorts of relationships allow both agencies to understand how regulation operates in their countries and to gain assurance from those things, and also to understand how they can raise concerns. So I think that's really important to make use of networks and to continue to seek to build those networks.
Thank you, Abi. Very valid points there. And this possibly is also one of the values that a network, an international network like INQAAHE can add to the community by facilitating that bilateral and multilateral exchange, by trying to fill in a bit of those gaps, particularly around understanding of how different countries approach transnational education. Any other? Yeah, Khairul, would you like to add something? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting topic to be discussed. In Malaysia, for example, we have the issue of, when we talk about recognition of other qualifications from other countries, we have no issues as long as they are recognized by their respective quality assurance bodies. So that is fine with us. But when it comes to TNE and it's inbound, they're coming to Malaysia, then they have to start to comply with the requirements of MQA. So this is where the gap is. And you know, as we recognize the programs that is being offered in the home country, but when it comes to Malaysia, they have to start to comply to our standards. So that is the tricky part. And we do, at this point of time, allow some flexibility. But again, not necessarily all programs are suited to be offered here in Malaysia. So that is the thing that we have at the moment, which maybe requires more fine, discussions and so on with our respective counterparts. Thank you.
Thank you, Khairul. And that's, of course, that is quite different from the model that you have in Dubai, Nitesh. Where
yeah, no, I was just going to say, yeah, I agree, Fabrizio, with the comments from our colleagues here. I think there's two approaches to it. One, as more and more host agencies continue to develop their own regulations, their own tools and systems. I mean, like in our case, we started with quality assurance many years ago. We've now added the QS ratings, which gives the public even more information on the campuses that they're choosing. And at the same time, that collaboration between agencies is so important. I mean, it's something that you've championed for a long time now. And I think it'll be great if INQAAHE starts to carry that flag, but to encourage that collaboration between agencies, it's so important. It's just, yeah, it's a game changer in terms of the recognition issue, but in also preventing other things that we suffer from, in terms of academic integrity, institutions kind of flying under the radar, offering things that they're not supposed to. But I think collaboration, working together can help solve some of those issues.
Thank you, Nitesh. That is great to hear. That all of you really seem to agree how cooperation, collaboration can go some way towards developing trust, enhancing trust. And I would say also the importance of engaging beyond the quality assurance community with other stakeholders, such as credential evaluators and, of course, institutions. Now, we have two videos from two institutions, but before playing those videos, let's look at some of the questions that delegates have posted, and let's try to take some of these. And now, I know that some of you already answered some of the questions which may be specific to particular countries. There is this one which seems to be quite general and not specific to specific countries or agencies. From Rosalini, how would agencies ensure that Tne is not merely a paper exercise, but a living practical applications for the benefit of Tne students and institutions? That's an interesting question because for me, it has to do with a particular challenge that quality assurance providers and Tne providers face, which is that of ensuring comparability, so ensuring quality and standards, but also ensuring relevance to the local context of delivery. So there's a fine balance between delivering something which is delivered similarly back home, but also being able to cater for the needs of the local context. I'd like to hear your views on this one, if you have specific views. Yeah, Abi.
So I think it's a really important question, and I totally agree with the point that you've just made, Fabrizio, about how important it is to ensure that quality and standards are upheld, but also that the context of the local delivery environment is reflected as well. That's an area where we consider that the principles-based and outcomes-focused approach that the Office for Students takes has a strength, because we can allow providers and their partners, if they're operating in a partnership, to determine what's right for their students, ensuring that they're meeting the requirements, whilst also ensuring that they're meeting the requirements that we have around quality and standards to ensure that they're delivering the best possible experience for students. So it's an example of that is the way that providers have responded to COVID and had to move lots of their provision online, for example, and had lots of students who might have been studying in the UK move and become TNE students, but that providers have found the right way to meet those demands for those needs and demands for their students, but also that the OFS is there to monitor and ensure that high standards are maintained.
Thank you, Abi. And yeah, Kushnood.
Thank you, Fabrizio. I agree with the panelists that collaboration and conversation is really important. I think that's a starting point, and we have to look at commonalities that we have, and then also look at our differences and try to synthesize those differences. I don't think we'll ever have a model that we can use throughout the world because of the local elements and issues. But I think we can come up with a framework that may be acceptable to many people. Right now, Middle States really requires its institutions to comply with all of the standards and requirements of affiliation that domestic institutions do. So when we do that, we run into problems like faculty credentials, governance models, academic freedom, transfer credits, and general education. You know, some of the differences there are quite stark. So working backwards and kind of trying to reconcile those, I think is really important.
Thank you, Krishna. Some very good points there. Any further comments before starting playing the videos from? I'll start with Monash. Yeah. Should I go with the video? Yeah. Beatrice, would you be able to play the Monash video?
Yes, hopefully without any technical issues.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Samantha Young. I'm the Director of the Office of Quality and Policy at Monash University. Fabrizio has asked me to speak with you about Monash's branch campus model of Tne. Monash is Australia's largest university in terms of student numbers and is a comprehensive research-intensive institution offering awards across 10 faculties. We have over 85,000 students enrolled in our campuses and teaching locations across the world, and we run a highly successful research and commercialisation program. You can see from this map that Monash manages its Tne activity in two main forms, both as partnership and articulation arrangements and as Monash-owned arrangements or branch campuses offshore. Monash's model is much more in the latter, with the recent addition of the new campus in Indonesia. The new campus in Indonesia came out of the 2020 Fair Trade Agreement between Australia and Indonesia and presented the opportunity for Monash to expand its footprint offshore. The branch campuses demonstrate impact across international locations and allow Monash to build research capacity across campuses, allowing our students amazing opportunities to foster engagement across borders and encourage international perspectives and cultures. Monash's branch campuses recognise and promote local initiatives and characteristics, and they move beyond simply customising a curriculum to suit the local environment and to truly integrate a partner or offshore location into our practice. There were lots of challenges that came with the establishment of the new campus in Indonesia, and most of these centred around government policy. So the agreement to establish Monash Indonesia, as I said, came out of the Free Trade Agreement and reflected Monash's expertise in the region and our demonstrated commitment to delivering high quality transnational education. Monash Indonesia is the first foreign-owned private university that was granted permission to operate in Indonesia in the higher education sector. With this came not only lots of excitement, but the challenge of navigating a new regulatory environment as regulations relevant to the campus were being drafted at the same time Monash was completing its application and compiling evidence to meet the ministry's expectation. An example of this is that we were required to evidence in a few different ways and to both the Ministry of Education and the local accrediting body how Monash University is regulated by TEXA in Australia and how it exercises its self-accrediting authority. Self-accrediting authority in Indonesia does not exist in the same way as it does in Australia. Engagement with experts on the ground was critical to the success of the application and also to the continuing operations of Monash Indonesia. And it's the best way for us to learn of new legislative obligations and expectations of the relevant government departments. Monash also connects with teams based in Malaysia as it takes advantage of existing networks to ensure the startup of the campus is successful. Thank you.
So, I'll mute myself. Thank you very much, Beatrice. I think that is very interesting. It raises a number of interesting points, some of which we already touched upon, in particular around localization, and again around the importance of communicating regulatory approaches, particularly, if I put myself in the shoes of TNE providers, I see engaging in TNE operations across multiple jurisdictions quite daunting. Often refer to regulatory jungles, because every country has got different regulations. You got to understand that, you got to comply with them, and these regulations change at the same time, so you need to keep on top with those changes. A number of challenges there. I'd like to hear from you. What would be your comment or your response to this contribution from Monash? Who would like to go first? Kushnood, please.
What I found interesting, the point that I found interesting was regarding engagement with local consultants. I think that's a really important point, because to understand local nuances and practices and get a better information about local education and other requirements is really important. Oftentimes, I think institutions fail to do their due diligence and connect with the local entities, so to speak, and that backfires sometimes and causes problems for the long term.
Thank you, Kushnood. Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with that. Anyone else would like to respond to that? Khairul, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the actually on the ground challenges will be, some countries have multiple agencies or bodies with regards to quality assurance, and they have different specific requirements, which can be very, diverse in nature. So compliance to all of this requires, as you said, consultants perhaps, and people who really know in and out of the country. So even in Malaysia, for example, MQA, we are in charge of majority of the program accreditations, but we work together closely with 23 professional bodies with regards to engineering programs, medicine, pharmacy, all these health sciences and so on. So different professional bodies have different requirements, and we also think that our TNEs here, especially the branch campuses, have maybe challenges with regards to certain professional bodies. So I think that is an issue that needs to be addressed. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Khairul. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Abi.
I think I've got a comment about England and the UK in particular. So the Office for Students doesn't have a remit to promote or facilitate overseas partnerships, but there are agencies within the UK that do, and obviously the OFS wants to make sure that we aren't doing anything that makes the situation more difficult for anyone. So I think that really highlights the importance of, as well as networks with overseas stakeholders, networks within the country where there's different organisations with different remits, to make sure that they're working together to explain this, how the regulation and quality assurance works within the country in respect of each agency's different role.
Thank you, Abi. And definitely INQAAHE can play a role in as much as it is the only global organization of quality assurance bodies. So we can provide that information. We can support even institutions in providing that information about regulatory environments. But also, I believe the Global Recognition Convention is a great opportunity, because as with the Lisbon Recognition Convention in the European area, that has led to the creation of national information centers, which are absolutely pivotal in providing information about international education systems. And with the Global Recognition Convention, we may be able to develop national information centers in every country or in more countries, which will provide that vital function. Nitesh, would you like to respond to Monash?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, congratulations to them for opening their new campus in Indonesia. Also good to see that Indonesia is now accepting full-fledged branch campuses. I mean, I was just kind of reflecting on the journey in Dubai. When we first started, we opened the free zones. I mean, there were a lot of challenges because it was new territory for us. And, we had to work through various phases, and the phases for us were, our first objective was increasing access. And so at the time, the idea was to invite any campus that really wanted to come in. And over time, we realized that quality was going to be so important. And then if we had to build a reputation for Dubai, that we couldn't allow anyone and everyone that met a checklist to come in. And so, the regulatory aspects and the quality assurance aspects kind of form the second stage of our development. And then over time, we got better at the gatekeeping activity of our work, which is deciding who comes in, what criteria should they meet before they come in. And so I think over time, these things develop, but there's always national objectives, there's national anchors, and you've got to balance that with the international aspect of it. So, which is what we've tried to do through QBBG, build this network, have better relationships with our counterparts in different parts of the world, understand each other, trust each other. One of the first things we did was we looked at the policies and practices of the 7 agencies, and not surprisingly, we're more different than we are alike. We kind of do things very differently, but our objectives are very similar. We want students to succeed. We want our respective countries to be successful as education destinations. And we just need to find those commonalities and see where we can collaborate and make things happen together.
That's really true. I really like that, Nitesh. And one aspect where I think the importance of collaboration and communication across agencies came out as being very important in the contribution from Monash was around ensuring that the host countries understood Monash self-accrediting status. This happened. This often happens with me in the UK when I'm asked questions by international regulators about the status of UK institutions and their programs, and it has to do with trust, because of course host countries would like to understand that the programs offered by particular institutions are reliable, and in the home campus, those institutions will be trusted, often because there is a history of engagement on the part of the regulators, the coordination body with that institution. But that is not the case in the host countries, and often that is not understood. So the communication between the senior receiving countries there will really help to develop that trust with TNE providers. And as we've seen in MQA, institutions with time have gained self-accrediting status in Malaysia, have improved, having demonstrated a track record. So yeah, trust is important and communication is key for that. Now, I'd like to, let's play the last contribution from Hertfordshire, from Frank Addleton at Hertfordshire.
Hello, my name is Frank Addleton, Director of Academic Quality Assurance at the University of Hertfordshire in the UK. And Fabrizio has invited me to talk to you about what I see as the quality assurance related challenges facing UK higher education providers in our delivery of TNE in the near future. We're a fairly large and well-established TNE provider. Our first 2 TNE partnerships were established in 1996 in Malaysia and Greece. So we've been doing this for quite a while. And now we have 31 partners spread across 18 countries worldwide, with over 6,500 students registered on them, which represents just over 20% of our total registered student number count, and all types of partnerships. So what are the current challenges facing UK universities? Undoubtedly, good quality, sustainable partnerships are built through regular engagement and common understanding. Travelling to the partner, whether that be by the international office, the academic management, or the link tutor, enhances that engagement and understanding. The value you get from face-to-face interaction is undeniable. But we're living in a very different world to the one that we lived in 3 years ago, of course. COVID and the restrictions it places on travel will not go away totally. On a positive note, as a result of COVID, the technologies we have to allow us to more effectively engage with partners from a distance have made massive advances, and their use is of course now commonplace. But we shouldn't assume that the infrastructure is in place in all locations that we currently work with. Environmental concerns are not top of the agenda at the moment because of pandemics and war, but they will re-emerge, of course, and we need to engage with partners on the other side of the world without regular flights. And finally, financial concerns and the need to maximize profit will often lead to the Director of Finance or PVCs International to direct that we engage with our partners virtually, even where it's not the most effective means of engagement. Ideally, sustainable partnerships should be built on mutual benefit, which is wider than commercial income. That wider benefit might be in terms of joint research, or seeking to increase international student mobility, or in terms of building capabilities in developing countries, co-curricular development, staff development, global reputation, and so on. I'm going to leave you with this 250-year-old quote that should be a warning to all universities thinking of making a quick buck out of T&E. Sustainable partnerships are high-quality partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. Well, some very interesting consideration there from Frank. I do like the last quote. I think it applies to all walks of life, really. And over to you. We would like to start with some comments to what Frank raised with us. Any takers? Well, I think it was interesting to hear, yeah, because it was interesting to hear how he stressed the importance of communication, engagement of a physical nature to establish trust, to maintain oversight of quality, but how institutions have to adjust to communication and engagement in a new challenging environment, COVID, environmental crisis, and that applies also to quality assurance bodies. Nitesh.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of waiting to see, the long-term or the medium-term impact of COVID, especially around international students. I mean, a lot of places, destinations were closed for the last couple of years. This year will be a good litmus test. Are students willing to travel again now that things are open, or are they comfortable with online education, hybrid distance education? So we're kind of waiting in Dubai as well. Last year we had a very good year, domestic enrollment, primarily because many students that would normally leave Dubai and go abroad were not able to. Also, Dubai was open, so a lot of students that would go to other destinations ended up coming here. But we're really waiting to see what happens over the next couple of months. Does that local demand plus international demand stay in play? Are things changing? Are the way students want to learn changing as well? So yeah, it'll be an interesting couple of months, but excellent issues raised by them. The other big issue is international travel, business travel, and we continue to do these webinars online. We haven't seen a lot of our colleagues and friends in person for a long time now, and I wonder when that'll resume. Will we really go back to face-to-face conferences, events, seminars, and so on? Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see how things unfold.
Absolutely. Kushnood, I consider.
Yeah, I agree with Nitesh. I think it's really important to remember that although the pandemic has brought us some new technologies and overcoming communication and things like that, when it comes to really being successful in a transaction, or so to speak, you have to be really close in proximity, and the cultural, the distance proximity does matter. Face-to-face interaction is much more important for long-term relationships. So on the one side, we have some benefits, but on the other side, we're even more distant from each other, especially when it comes to culture.
Thank you, Kushnood. And I saw that Khairul, was raising his hand. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I like the word trust, because basically now we are talking about when we talk about the operational side of this TNE with regards to inbound programs in Malaysia. So what are the issues is that we need to ensure there are issues of MOUs being and MOUs not being actually honored until the end. So then the victims will be the students. So we explicitly put a condition that these MOUs or MOAs requires a teaching out clause in it to ensure that the students are not victimized. So that is the approach that we have based on experience. And these are things that we have to be very, very alert and very, very sensitive to. So I think that these are just some of the points. Thank you.
Thank you, Khairul. Yeah. Abi, would you like to add anything to what our colleagues have said? Yeah.
I think I sort of really agree with the points that Frank makes in his talk about how important it is that quality is not compromised whilst providers are working out how to deal with the challenges that we keep being thrown at the moment, and that providers keep being thrown. So I think, yeah, just to say, I really agree with his point. And I also recognise, sort of on a personal note, what he's saying about the benefits of face-to-face engagement, and picking up what Nitesh said. It's been great to meet lots of people virtually recently, but I met some of Khairul's colleagues in person when they came to London, and it's really great to be able to speak to people in person. So I think we're all looking forward to being able to do that again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, going back to the issue of quantity versus quality, I guess probably the IT technology allows us to engage with probably a broader set of people, but then you miss that in-depth engagement, which is key for trust, isn't it? And now I'm conscious of time. I'd like to conclude with considering an aspect which I already touched upon, which is also been touched upon by one of the questions asked by Naga around the possibility of achieving a common ground and standards. And I saw that my colleagues, my INQAAHE fellow board member, Susanna, has also posted a link to some of the work that INQAAHE is doing around the review of our guidelines of good practice, which move into more to a more standard-like approach, which also branch out to look at specific aspects of quality assurance activity, including Tne. So this is INQAAHE's attempt to start contributing in developing a common ground for quality assurance bodies looking at and working around transnational education. What I would like to ask you, really, as a way also for INQAAHE to benefit from your insights directly, is what do you think a network like INQAAHE could do to support its members and its member quality assurance bodies and the higher education quality assurance community more generally, in support them around this particular area, which is the quality assurance of cross-border education or transnational education? Anyone?
I think you're already doing that. I think having this conversation is really critical. Better understanding what others do, and looking at best practices and trying to reconcile those. And this is going to take a long time. You can look at as a case, look at the international accounting model, where they've been trying to come up with a framework that's common to everybody, and that's taken years. And even now they have standards, but they're not accepted by everybody, including the US and UK. So again, coming up with a structure where everybody's voice is heard, but maybe not totally reconciled, because I think that's the nature of the beast. You're not going to have everything exactly for the same for every class of people.
Thank you, Kushnood. Nitesh.
I think Fabrizio, just INQAAHE needs to continue to be the platform, to share information, to get people together. Perhaps they can, also help with the regional networks to get them moving, and some of the informal networks that exist. And now you have the opportunity. I mean, before we used to go to the INQAAHE conference once a year or once every couple of years. Now things can be done online. You can get people together, run sessions, run workshops, and I think we need to take advantage of that. Just not overdo it, but the right amount with the right topics, and getting to attendees that are interested in those areas.
That's great. Thank you, Nitesh. That validates our effort in developing this series of INQAAHE talks. Thank you, Nitesh. Khairul, Abi, would you like any words of suggestions? Yeah, Abi.
I really agree with the points about sort of the difficulties in getting complete alignment, but I think because obviously each agency's processes reflect the context that they operate in within their own countries. But I think, yeah, INQAAHE can offer some really valuable opportunities to bring people together, and also to seek to find sort of commonalities. And I think, as well as bringing together sort of regulators from sending and receiving countries, I think another thing that would be really useful is bringing together peer regulators. The Office for Students, as I mentioned, is still quite a new organisation, so we're really keen to speak to other peer regulators and learn from their approaches to regulating transnational education as well.
It's very helpful. And Khairul, the last word to you.
Yeah, I think I agree with Nitesh's point with regards to the leveraging on the regional networks that we have. And there are, of course, even when we talk about regional networks, there are really strong networks. The European networks are definitely one of the best ones, for example. And we at ASEAN, we have our own network and framework as well that we have, but we are still work in progress. I guess this is a very important platform when things are going on, developing at the regional level, and then we can talk from between regions, and then this is where INQAAHE can come in and connect between the regions. I think this is a way forward for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Khairul, and thank you to all the panelists. We've come to an end of our webinar. I was going through the Q&A questions, and I see that all the questions addressed to every specific agency has been responded, so that's great. Thank you again to our panelists to contribute to today's session, to answer all those questions. I'm sure you will be able to answer any further questions that delegates may have in the coming days, so please do get in touch with them. INQAAHE can facilitate you getting in touch with them. And I'd like to thank all the attendees. We've had a peak of around 200 participants today. We have recorded this session, and so it will be made available, and we will share the link to you. I would like to thank Beatrice and Maria, who helped us with the smooth running of this event, particularly in playing the videos. Thank you very much. And all the delegates really to have engaged so constructively with the event, and do watch out for the next INQAAHE talk. So you will soon be notified of the topic and time and date of the next INQAAHE talk. So with this, I'll leave you to the rest of your day, whether it is morning or evening or night. Thank you again to all the panelists and to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.